Okay, so here we are. We are back again. We are going through the Bible in a year at 230 miles an hour. We're just doing the big picture. We're looking at the books pretty fast as they go by. We are now in the book of Ezekiel, which puts us into the section known as the prophets. So just a little bit of review as we jump back in after a little hiatus. We said that the Bible comes in sections, and they were scrolls, really. They came in scrolls, and we now have them in one book. But the sections would have been the first 5 books of the Bible, known as the Torah, known as the Law of Moses, known as the Law, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy means the second law. So the law was given in the book of Exodus. It's given again in the book of Deuteronomy when they get ready to go into the land. Known as the law. And pretty important as we go through the Bible, if you want to understand the Bible, when they're talking about the law, that's what they're talking about. Those first 5 books, the 5 books of Moses, the law. And the laws that he gave for them to live in a theocracy with God as their leader, no king, just God as their leader. And so then after that, we got into what was known as the history books. And there were several history books, beginning with Joshua going into the land and taking the land and dividing it up, and then the book of Judges. And then we get into Israel's history all the way up until they're exiled. So we go through all of those history books. Then we said that there's a problem with the way that the English Bible is constructed. There's no problem with the Bible. It's just that where the books are placed, because they're not necessarily placed in chronological order, and nor were they written or intended to be in chronological order. But we get to this section that we called poetry, which are the books of poetry. And those particular books, we had the Psalms, the Proverbs, the Song of Solomon, and the book of Job. The book of Job. And we said that Job was probably the first book that was written, really, predated Genesis, most likely. And we gave the reasons for that, why we thought that that might be true. So those are the poetry books. And then we left out Ecclesiastes. So it would have been Job, Proverbs, Job, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and the Song of Solomon. So Solomon gets a couple of books in there. And then you have the Psalms. And then we got into the prophets. Now, the problem with the prophets, they're called major prophets and minor prophets. The problem with the prophets is that they're not in chronological order at all. They're scattered all over the place, and they're broken, like we said, into major and minor. Major just means the big, long prophets, like we're looking at right now, Ezekiel, big, long prophet. The minor prophets are just shorter. But it makes them feel like they're insignificant. I think probably books of the Bible that get read the least are probably these minor prophets. They're called minor, as though it doesn't matter. And some of these minor prophets are just fabulous in what they're teaching. But we're in Ezekiel now. In Ezekiel, as a prophet, he's been talking about the judgment to come. He's a prophet of judgment and a prophet of in the exile, they're going into exile. But now he breaks. He breaks here in about chapter 36. And in chapter 36, the break is that he's going to start talking about Israel's restoration, because he's an exile prophet, right? They went into exile because of their idolatry. And Ezekiel preaches about that, prophesies about it, warns about it, tells them what to do. Well, from 36 on, in typical God form, he talks about restoration. So sin and judgment and consequence, and then there's restoration. There's restoration. So from 36 on, he's talking about Israel's restoration, and that it's assured, that it's guaranteed that God will restore, even though they've gone into bondage, even though they've gone and paid the penalty, even though there's consequences for what they've done. God has guaranteed them restoration. And chapter 36 talks about that, them coming back into the land again, that God will give it to them again. Now, what we learn from the history books is, yes, they did go back into the land, but boy, it was hard for them. It was hard for them the second time when they had to go in and start rebuilding and do it all over again, and just the morale of the country and the unity of the country. But restoration. So, very interesting restoration prophecy in chapter 37, the Valley of Dry Bones. And I think we said that the Jerusalem Post today has a cartoon that's called Dry Bones. And it's called Dry Bones because Israel came back into the land in 1948, and they saw that this was a fulfillment, or believed it was a fulfillment, of Ezekiel when they came back into the land. You see, they were scattered in the land. First of all, they were scattered in the exile, right, in Babylon. And then they come back into the land, and then they're scattered again in the year 70, when there's the last great rebellion against Rome. And they're scattered all over the planet. And so Ezekiel 37 seems to be a promise of them certainly coming back from Babylon, but also another regathering of Israel. Maybe the regathering that happened in the lifetime of some of us who are still alive on the planet. The hand of the Lord was on me, chapter 37, and he brought me out out by the Spirit of the Lord, and he set me in the midst of a valley, and it was full of dry bones. And he led me back and forth among them, and I saw a great many bones on the floor, bones that were very dry. And he said, Son of man, can these bones live? Well, he answered, right, this is how you want to write. He said, I don't know, only you know, Lord. And then he said, prophesy to these bones. Dry bones, hear the word of the Lord. This is what the sovereign Lord says to these bones. I'll make breath enter into you, and you will come to life. I will attach tendons to you and make flesh come upon you and cover you with skin. I will put breath in you, and you will come to life, and then you'll know I'm the Lord. The dry bones will live. Well, who are these dry bones? So I prophesied as I was commanded. And as I was prophesying, there was a noise, a rattling sound. The bones came together, bone to bone. I looked, the tendons and the flesh appeared on them, and skin covered them, but there was no breath in them. And then he said, prophesy to the breath. Prophesy, Son of man. Say, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Come, breathe from the four winds, and breathe into the slain that they might live. And so I prophesied as he commanded me, and breathed on them, and they came to life, and they stood to their feet, a vast army. An army comes to life. And then he said, Son of man, these bones are the people of Israel, the dry bones. And they say, our bones are dried up, our hope is gone, and look cut off. Therefore prophesy and say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says. My people, I'm going to open your graves, and I'm going to bring you up from them. I'll bring you back to the land of Israel. What a great prophecy. You're coming back into the land. Then you, my people, will know that I'm the Lord when I open your graves. I will put my spirit in you, and you will live. I will settle you in your own land. And then you will know that I, the Lord, have spoken. I have done it, declares the Lord. I have done it. And so here you have them coming back to life. From the four winds, coming back to life, being resettled into the land. Is this a resettling after the exile? Sure. Is this a resettling, coming back into the land again? I believe it is. I believe that this is a 20th century prophecy that was fulfilled in the 20th century when God brought them back again. And he brought them back into the land again, brought them back into the land of Israel. And so there's more to say about some of this. We'll see what we can do with Ezekiel, but we need to move on. So fabulous, fabulous prophecy in the book of Ezekiel of them coming back and living in the land and being the people of God once again. God is faithful. So there we go. Love you guys. Let's move on. Let's march on through the Old Testament, the whole Bible, nothing but the Bible. Bless you guys.